Everyone. We are going to get going here quickly, so get yourself settled, grab your water, your coffee, whatever you need, and we are going to get going here. First of all, happy Small Business Week to everyone, to all the Chamber members today. For those of you who do not know me, my name is Carly Minish, and I am the founder of Smack Dab, and I am also the co-chair of the Winnipeg Chamber of Commerce's Small Business Advisory Council. Before we start, on behalf of the Winnipeg Chamber of Commerce, I'd like to acknowledge that we are gathered this morning virtually on Treaty 1 territory, the traditional land of the Ojibwe, Cree, Oji-Cree, Dakota, and Dene nations, and the homeland of the Red River Métis. Reconciliation with our Indigenous communities is an important and ongoing journey the Chamber is committed to, and we challenge each and every one of you to join us on this journey. To learn more, please check out our Truth and Reconciliation Roadmap on, it's going to be a website, winnipeg-chamber.com/TRR. I'm going to repeat that, winnipeg-chamber.com/TRR. So for those of you who might not know, the Chamber's Small Business Advisory Council is a group of small business owners from a variety of sectors here in Winnipeg. Our job is to represent you and to help shape future programming and events at the Chamber. As a small business owner myself, I know the power of community and coming together, especially in a time we are in. In fact, we saw this at our last business forum in September, where we as a community came together and talked about mental health and mental fitness. And for those of you that were there, it was fantastic. It was a really, really, really valuable forum. We took time out of our day to really listen to one another. We shared our deepest fears and our hopes for our businesses. We talked about our feelings and what we were doing to manage some of these feelings. There is so much power and good that can come from our community, just simply listening to one another and being there for one another. And that is the hope for today's Small Business Summit. So thank you so much for being here and for tuning in. So today's summit will be a safe space for our small business community to talk with our city officials and the mayor. Let us work together and talk about what challenges we are facing now and how we can together find some solutions. So with that, I want to introduce our host for today's summit, Jessica Dumas, past board chair of the Winnipeg Chamber of Commerce, everyone knows Jessica, and president of Jessica Dumas Coaching and Training.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you, Carly, and happy Small Business Week to everyone. As Carly mentioned, my name is Jessica Dumas. I am the past chair of the Winnipeg Chamber of Commerce, first time I'm saying that, and president of Jessica Dumas Coaching and Training. Shri Raj Patel, our current board chair, is unfortunately not available to join us today. If I had to guess, he's probably meeting with his own RBC small business clients right now, and because of that, I'm more than happy to fill in for him. In 2015, we launched our first Small Business Summit with Mayor Bowman and the City of Winnipeg. It was at the Mayor's inaugural State of the City address earlier that March that he made engagement and collaboration with our small business community a priority. In the past 5 years of hosting our Small Business Summit, we've connected over 1,000 of our members directly with Mayor Bowman and his team. Today, we continue to look forward to finding new ways and innovative ways to work together. Traditionally, our summit is hosted in person, but our virtual summit this morning is set up to reflect your usual in-person event experience. For example, as you logged in today, you hopefully saw the networking tab on your left-hand side. There, you can enter one-on-one video sessions with other attendees. Or if you prefer, you can visit the many different member exhibit booths by clicking Expo on the tabs. Maybe you have a client or even a prospective one that you want to connect with, and now's your chance. As you'd scan the room and tap them on the shoulder, you can do so virtually from the comfort of your office or your home, simply by clicking People off the list on the right-hand side and send them a private message. These are just a few of the features that we have available for you to connect and grow your network, all from your home or office. If you have any technical issues today, please connect with any of our chamber staff or volunteers through the chat on the right-hand side. They're listed as WCC Help under the attendee list. Before I welcome our keynote, I would like to say a special thank you to our sponsors. Thank you to our title sponsor, Taylor McCaffrey, BDC, KPMG, Chamber of Commerce Group Insurance Plan, and RBC. We encourage you to get on social media and join us in the conversation and use the hashtag WCCBiz. We'll be jumping into our fireside chat with Mayor Bowman shortly, but before I do so, I wanted to explain how today's luncheon will work. The first half of today's program will be a fireside with our mayor. We have collected questions from our members, diving into topics such as the city's COVID-19 response plan, diversity and inclusion, red tape reduction, and more. The second half of the program will be an opportunity for us as a community to come together and talk. As an attendee, you have the option to join several breakout sessions with different topics. Each breakout session will be hosted by a civic staff who can answer your questions regarding that topic. I'm really excited about this. And who's ready to listen to your thoughts or challenges around that issue is who will be in that group. Stay tuned, we'll provide more detailed instructions after the fireside chat. With that, I'd like to introduce our very special guest today, Mayor Brian Bowman, as I stutter. Mayor Brian Bowman was first elected in 2014, becoming the 43rd mayor of the city of Winnipeg, and was re-elected for a second term in October 2018, winning 53% of the total votes. Mayor Bowman is passionate about ensuring Winnipeg is a city that works for every citizen, is committed to building a stronger Winnipeg through openness, transparency, and accessibility. He's committed to developing a long-term economic plan for the future, improving infrastructure, and building safer communities to create a more innovative, diverse, and engaging city. Brian holds a Bachelor of Arts in History and Political Studies from the University of Manitoba and a law degree from the University of Toronto. Thank you for joining us, Mayor Brian Bowman.
Thanks. Nice to join you again.
Happy to see you. Please feel free to say good morning to our audience.
Sure. Well, firstly, thank you very much, everybody, for attending this event, and thank you to the Winnipeg Chamber of Commerce for doing this once again. This is the 5th annual Small Business Summit. It's a really important part of the calendar for me and for some of our senior administrators and councillors who attend. And this is a really important time for us to be having the conversations that we're having right now. We're in the middle of a global pandemic. We know businesses are hurting right now as a result of the challenge that we're all facing. We know city services are having to change as well, and I know we're going to talk about that, Jessica. The one thing I will say to everybody is, firstly, thank you for doing your part to help this community weather the storm, to look after you and your staff, your families, to keep them safe, but also to look after the economic viability of the small business community, which is incredibly important for us now and will be coming out of this pandemic. The one thing I will say is, as we work to support the efforts of Manitoba Health, getting back to the fundamentals right now as we're recording this are incredibly important. We have to make sure that we're doing everything we can to flatten the curve once again. So that's getting back to the fundamentals of wearing a mask, washing your hands, and watching your distance. The reason this is important is not only for our health, but also the health of our economy and our business community. We want to make sure we're getting back to business as quickly as possible. And by flattening the curve, we're going to accomplish that. So with that, I'm thrilled to be here. I'm looking forward to the conversation. I think the second part of the day in terms of that direct access to senior city officials is perhaps even more interesting than this part. I think it's great, and it's good to get that access and that accessibility. And I know the feedback we've received from previous years about that interaction from the city's perspective has been really positive and really needed.
Excellent. Thank you so much. We're pleased to have you. This is going to be fun too. We're going to make this the funnest part of the event.
I'm looking for the fire. I don't see the actual fire here.
Yeah, I'm looking for that too. So thank you. We're really happy that this remains a priority to our city and to our mayor. And I think that many of us are also staying up late at night trying to figure out how do we do this. So thank you. So a few months ago, you did a webinar with the chamber members, and you said that the pandemic has changed the way the city does business, and it's not going back. So can you tell us a little bit about how the pandemic has transformed how the city is making decisions and making those decisions quickly?
Well, I think the lens that everybody is placing on business decisions and governmental operations are now increasingly seen through the lens of the pandemic, of course. Mm-hmm. Businesses are having to make decisions in real time, responding to changing conditions in the face of the pandemic. It's been the same way for the city as well. I mean, we are we are there to support, and we've been doing everything we can to support Manitoba Health. They've got difficult work to do right now, and the City of Winnipeg as a government has been there to support their efforts, and we're going to continue to do that. What we've had to do is really look at all of our city services, many of which are based on human contact, human interactions, getting people in facilities in person. So whether it's recreation facilities, whether it's libraries or transit, among many others, it's about moving people and products. And of course, the city is just like businesses. We've had to adapt and build in that resilience to our operations. Some of the things that Winnipeggers will have seen, we had to make sure business continuity was happening for government. And so it was really important that we continue to make the investments in the economy early in the pandemic. So this was another record year of road construction and other capital investments. That was really important early on, but how we do it, of course, has had to evolve. We've also had to make sure that business continuity is there in terms of how decisions are made at City Hall. And so remote meetings is something that we moved quickly to. We've extended them until April. So committee meetings as well as council meetings now can be attended virtually by delegations, including the Winnipeg Chamber of Commerce, who regularly appears to advocate on behalf of members in delegation at our meetings. But members of council can appear and make votes, remotely, and that's something that's changed. Folks will have seen changes to a lot of our online services, which we'll be discussing, including permits, but also we've had to build in some resiliency and some innovation in terms of everything from patios to parking to transit along the way. And so we're going to continue to evolve and adapt to make sure that we can keep the business of government moving, and to do that in the context of a global pandemic continues to challenge us. But I'm really proud of the work that the public service and my council colleagues have been doing.
Great, good to hear. Question number 2 is a chamber member. His name is Nick Duclius, owner of Helios Restaurant on St. Mary's Road. Nick sits on the Chamber Small Business Advisory Council. Welcome, Nick.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor. My name is Nick Duclius from Helios Restaurant and Catering. The restaurant industry has been especially hard hit by the pandemic. Early on, the city brought in a program to allow temporary patio spaces so restaurants could start serving customers again. With the winter months approaching, along with a second wave of the pandemic, what options are you looking at to support restaurants in particular?
It's a great question because we know that they've been hit hard. Many industries have been hit hard. Restaurants have been hit especially hard. I guess the short answer is we've extended the temporary patios till the end of October, but also we've just announced last week the new winter patio program. And so that will be available for those that choose to opt into that. And hopefully that can provide some small support from the city's perspective. We've also, of course, been making adjustments to parking. So temporary loading zones and those sorts of measures are all intended to primarily help the restaurant industry. And then, of course, early on in the pandemic, City Council made some broad changes to taxation collection in terms of deferrals that benefit all businesses, including the restaurants.
Excellent. Being a winter city, I'm really curious what those winter patios will be like, but we've seen some stuff on the river, so I think we can make that happen.
Yeah, I mean, it's not going to be for everyone, and businesses will have to make a business decision whether they want to opt into that. I, for one, am looking forward to having cold beer on a patio in the winter, and I'll be there in January. There's a lot of good craft beer that you can have here in Winnipeg, and a lot of local businesses that could benefit from providing those options. And so you won't have to worry about your beer getting warm. That won't be a problem. That's one measure that we can do, and we'll certainly keep our eyes and our options open going forward. And we're continuing to press provincial and federal governments who have more significant levers to provide relief to organizations like restaurants.
Great, good to hear, good plan. There have been a lot of exciting developments downtown recently throughout the pandemic, but we clearly recognize it's reduced a lot of foot traffic in the area. So what steps is the city taking to ensure positive momentum continuing in a positive direction downtown?
The decrease in foot traffic is a reflection of the fact that people are staying home more so to work. And so, it shouldn't surprise folks that as businesses and individuals in the business community take the advice of Manitoba Health that they're going to stay home. If you have any symptoms, we're asking people stay home. Businesses and a lot of the towers downtown right now are not at the capacity that they are used to because of the pandemic, and so that is reducing the foot traffic that we see. That being said, there's a lot of good work that still is ongoing in downtown, and the investments have been, not just this year, but in recent years, has really been off the charts. I mean, if you take a look at everything from the Artist Tower, which is emerging right near Portage and Main as we speak right now, the Richardson International Innovation Center, Red River College's Innovation Center, which is emerging, just had a tour of that facility, the Inuit Arts Center, True North Square, Wawanesa investment and building will start going up very soon. There's a lot of positive momentum in downtown. And then the investments that the municipality has been making directly in terms of roads and active transportation have continued throughout the pandemic. I mean, going down Portage Avenue right now, downtown, is probably one of the smoothest roads you'll go on. And we want people to know that their downtown continues to modernize and improve in terms of the investments and the amenities. And so I would just encourage everyone, get downtown as often as you can, support our small and local businesses. And, you know, and you'll see a lot of changes. For those that don't go downtown regularly, they may not have seen the Marketlands and see the transformation that's happening there with the PSB now being removed. The beautiful facade of Red River College that you can see from City Hall is spectacular. And so that transformation and those investments continue at record pace.
Great. I like that invitation to come back downtown, because I was used to coming downtown all the time, and then that's changed. But it's such a treat to continue to do that and find ways to do that safely.
Yeah.
So I like that.
Lots of options: East Exchange, West Exchange, downtown, West End Biz. I mean, you go in every corner of the downtown as well. You'll see changes being made at a pace that we really haven't experienced in decades. And so the cranes are still moving in downtown Winnipeg right now during the pandemic, and that's a good thing.
Great. Speaking about exciting, what do you think of the recent news about Amazon's delivery service coming to Winnipeg?
You know, in some ways, I'm not surprised, because, you know, the question could be, why not Winnipeg? I mean, Winnipeg is a great place to invest or to expand your business. Amazon is increasingly recognizing this, as other businesses are, especially when you talk about multimodal investments. This one is primarily land-based, you know, delivery that will be happening in the city of Winnipeg. The Amazon investment that I'm actually even more excited about was the one from a couple of years ago, and that's Amazon's ThinkBox. I mean, this is an investment. It's happening at the Forks. It's engaging our creative sector, and that's one that if chamber members aren't aware of, it's worth checking out, because it's a pretty cool investment, and it's one that provides high-paying jobs for our creative sector here in the city of Winnipeg, and the products, of course, that they're producing are seen around the world. And so, you know, we're seeing those investments by Amazon, but by others. And we'll continue to work with the Chamber, but also with Economic Development Winnipeg, and yes, Winnipeg in particular, to help promote Winnipeg as a great place to invest and to expand your business in.
Great, good work from them. Last year, the city introduced a landmark 4-year budget cycle. This move significantly enhances the city's ability to manage finances long term, but has indeed been invaluable to the city's ability to assess the impact of COVID. What impact has the pandemic had on the city's finances, and how might that impact property taxes and other fees in the years ahead?
Well, how much time do we have for this one? Because I could talk for about an hour on this one. Look, I mean, a four-year balanced budget. It's never been done before in the city of Winnipeg. It is absolutely a testament to the work of our finance chair and council, as well as our public service and the community. You know, I had questions at the beginning whether or not we could pull it off, because we had to balance not just 1 year, but 4 years with elected members of council who have cards that include Conservative, Liberal, and New Democrat cards. And so the fact that we were able to bring people across the political spectrum together to balance 4 years is really, I think, a testament to to the efforts and leadership at City Hall for council. What it did is it positioned us well to respond to the challenges financially of the pandemic. And so if we had not balanced the 4 years, this year for the next budget cycle, which we're going into now for the update, we were looking at about $120 million projected structural deficit. And so we'd be actually right now looking at how do we reduce services, increase rates, those sorts of things to deal with 120 million. We did the difficult work, we made those difficult decisions, we replenished the fiscal stabilization fund, and so it pretty much made us COVID proof as a budget organization. We still have challenges. I mean, we right after we balanced the 4 years, within weeks we were dealing with the COVID-19 crisis cash management plan, which allowed us to pull various levers to put us in a better position for this budget cycle. And so at one point we had 9% of our workforce temporarily laid off, significant amongst all levels of government. That was a lot of pain to do that, but it was the right decision to make in order to position us to respond to the challenges of COVID. Transit is really the big story in terms of the new incremental costs that are associated with COVID. We are running buses that are not at full capacity, and we are doing that and taking it on the chin in terms of the cost to transit. But we're doing it to keep the economy moving, as well as to keep people as safe as possible when they're riding transit. And so we've made that decision very deliberately because we have a role to play in supporting Manitoba Health. We now have some difficult decisions going forward in terms of the budget update, but we'll get through it and we will balance the budget. It will be continued to balance once the adjustments are made in this budget cycle. But Winnipeggers, I know, will look at all three levels of government. I, as a Canadian, as a Manitoban, as a Winnipegger, I want to see all three levels of government balancing their budget. We do, and we've done it for 4 years, and I'm really proud of that.
Great, good job. Who knew? Who knew, right? Last year, sorry.
No, I was just going to say, we voted on, we had to accelerate the budget timing so that we could vote on it because we were going right into the pandemic even before we were finished. What we didn't know is how long this is lasting, and it's lasting a lot longer than anybody would like.
Yeah, and the actual overall impact. Yeah. Last year, the city committed to fixing some problems that had been identified in the Permits and Inspections Department. Can you talk to us about some of the progress that's happening? Yeah,
good work by a permitting department and their public service. They've been doing some great work, and that started well before this spring. But this spring, in March and April and May, there's been changes and positive improvements, primarily shifting to online. So the online permits, the alternative video inspections has been very well received by business owners. We're going to continue to evolve, not just to respond to the problems that we saw last year identified with the permitting, with certain employees within the permitting department, but also just to make sure that we're streamlining business operations. And so I want to thank everybody for their feedback, including the Chamber. Permitting department has been doing great work, and for those that aren't aware of some of those changes, all that information is available online.
Great. I haven't personally had that experience, but I'm happy to hear that because we definitely do have those conversations often at the Chamber.
Yeah, it's an evolution. These things don't start and stop. They should never. We should always be looking for how do we provide better and easier ease of access to permitting, for example. And so you can now be at home, as many are doing right now. It could be 2 a.m. on a weekend, and you can deal with the online permitting process. And so that's something that has changed over recent years, and it continues to improve and get better. And that's something we're going to continue to do. One of the things I did, I reset the mandate letters and made them public, as I've done for years with our committee chairs. And one of the things that I should remind Chamber members is I asked all of the chairs of the committees to take a look at what are the changes that we're making during the pandemic that can remain beyond the pandemic, that just are smart government. And so The online services is one of those things. Those remote meetings is something that we may look at permanently among many other online tools and information pieces. And so we're going to keep our options open, and each of the committee chairs have been tasked to look at what can they do in their portfolios going forward and coming out of the pandemic to just improve the lives of our businesses as well as our residents.
Excellent. And also some conversation we can take into our breakout sessions in a bit too. Reducing red tape at all levels of government is always a concern for businesses. So what is the latest on the city's efforts to streamline regulations and processes?
So I guess I answered this one just now already. So
I'm thinking,
Yeah.
what can we go deeper on?
Well, you know what? One thing I'll say is you see governments talk a lot about reducing red tape, they should always do that. I mean, that's just how do you create smarter government? I find trying to get data out in public, inviting people, including chamber members, to provide their feedback at where we can reduce red tape is good. There was a red tape report that happened in the previous administration that came and went. It's not like the need for red tape reduction goes away once you've kind of checked those boxes. And so what I'll say is there's been a lot of improvements in recent years. Permitting is probably one of the best examples. But what I would say is I recognize there's always more work we can do, and we want to invite the community, especially the business community, to give us real and practical suggestions that we can implement, and we'll do our best to do that.
Excellent. And time is always evolving, the way that we do business is always evolving, but of course right now with the pandemic and how businesses are shifting sometimes in dramatic ways, really important time to continuously talk about these changes.
Yeah, and one of the things you can look forward to this month is new aspects, a new webpage for the City of Winnipeg, and so that's something that's going to improve the interface and the accessibility of the website itself. So, City website's a pretty popular site. There's a lot of information there. We want to make it easier for people to access the information they need in the platforms that they're accessing it. So that's something to keep an eye out for as well.
Great, right on. Look forward to that. Our next question is from another chamber member, Remo Desordi, who's a partner at Taylor McCaffrey, our sponsor for today's summit. Over to you, Remo.
Jessica, I'm Remo Desordi with Taylor McCaffrey. At Taylor McCaffrey, we act for a number of clients across an entire spectrum of businesses, from the small, the medium, and to the large. And for all of them, we have seen in the last 7 months their requirement and their ability to innovate and, to use everyone's favorite word, to pivot to the new circumstances that have arisen. Around the world over the past few years, there's been a big focus on innovation at the civic level. Can you tell us how Winnipeg is tackling innovation, and what are some of the success stories you can point to that have had an impact on the business community?
Well, it's a great question, and all my best to our friends at Taylor. What I'll say is, moving a lot of things online. I mean, that's obviously the shift, and that's not new, but it's accelerated during the pandemic. And so, we've been working hard over the last number of years on our open data and our open government initiatives. I'm really proud of the fact that we've moved from 20th to second place in the Open Cities Index across Canada. And it's really as a result of the hard work by a lot of people over many years. One of the things that we've tried to do and demonstrate is not just innovation in city services, but also what we're practicing at City Hall. And so I've referenced the remote meeting. Something that we just started at the committee level this last month is electronic voting. So what Winnipeggers may not be aware of, I know the Chamber, I know Colin Fast and many others will follow diligently the proceedings at City Hall, but for folks who are just trying to run their businesses, they don't have the time to kind of check on how people are voting certain ways. And so one of the things people may be surprised with is that typically council votes yea or nay for something, and you don't know how individual councillors or the mayor votes on particular matters. Well, we want to change that. Electronic voting will allow you to track and hold us accountable, and I think it'll lead to better decision making and accountability going forward. That's one of the pieces of innovation that is relatively new in the last number of weeks. I've mentioned the website as well, but also alternative video inspections and many other innovations we're trying to incorporate. The Transportation Management Center is also something that, we're partnering with private sector on near miss data. I mean, if you just look at the open data and open government platforms, you'll see a city that is now being cited around North America as a leader for innovation. Seattle recently had to look at who do we need to follow within North America. Winnipeg was one of the top 3 that's being cited in the US now and in cities around the world as a city to watch in terms of innovation. And so I think we've got a good story to tell. It's a reflection of the innovative sector in Manitoba and in Winnipeg that their municipal government would be embracing innovation as well. And our work isn't done.
Excellent. I always just want to do like a virtual round of applause, but there's, at your desk, you can join me in that virtual round of applause. That's great news. I love hearing those stories. Awesome.
Well, Winnipeggers have been innovating for decades. I mean,
absolutely.
You look at industry after industry. I mean, this, in many ways, government should really just be reflecting that innovative thinking. And it's not always just about technology, it's about processes and how do we do things smarter. And so, we've tried to, I've tried to lead by example, and we've tried to demonstrate at City Hall where we can find efficiencies to really look at things through citizen impact. And so when you look at open data, open government, the lens is always citizen impact. How do we interface and how do we make the interactions with government better? Because we know the interactions with federal, provincial, and municipal governments aren't always positive. We're there to serve, and so we're always going to be looking for ways that we improve that experience.
Absolutely, great. Now we have another video question. This one is from Lauren Remillard, President and CEO of the Winnipeg Chamber. Lauren, what is your question?
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for once again partnering with the Winnipeg Chamber of Commerce on your annual Small Business Summit. Social justice issues have figured prominently over the past year. One of your first acts as mayor was to bring in the historic City of Winnipeg Indigenous Accord, a truly landmark achievement for our community. My question is, further to that accord, what has the city been doing to listen and respond to the needs of racialized communities, gender, sexual, and relationship diversity community, as well as individuals with disabilities?
That's a great question from Lauren, and I want to thank the Chamber for signing on to the Indigenous Accord. It's a document that if every individual and business that is watching this hasn't signed, they should be signing today, and they should be learning more about it. It's trying to create that ripple effect in the community where it matters most, to make sure that we're all doing our part to respond to the calls to action in the TRC, but also respond to the calls to justice in the Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls report. In terms of the broader question that Lauren's asked, though, some more recent things that we've done. When I was running for re-election in 2018, I ran on creating the Human Rights Committee of Council. We've delivered on that. We have our new Human Rights Committee of Council. Members are some incredible leaders in our community. One of the first things to come out was the newcomer welcome and inclusion policy that is building in inclusion throughout city services to a much greater extent than in the past. So we want to look at how do you access city services through the lens of a newcomer, somebody new to Winnipeg, and by doing so, we're trying to break down some of those barriers to access city services than have been happening in the past. The other thing that we've been working on is the Welcoming Winnipeg initiative, and this is something that we've recently won an international award for the public engagement aspect of this. And the Welcoming Winnipeg initiative takes, if you follow the news and you're watching monuments come down in other communities around North America and the polarizing debate that is happening around place names, what we wanted to do is try to be more proactive and invite Winnipeggers to come together to take a look at how do we share and tell our stories through monuments and place names in our community, because right now it's a one-sided history. It's not an accurate reflection. We don't want to replace history, we just want to tell it accurately. And so there are a number of monuments and place names that could very well become very polarized, focused, divisive debates. We're trying to do our best to get ahead of that and to do it by also communicating the message that this community is for everybody, that everybody should be proud to call Winnipeg their home. And the reality is not everybody is, because everyone's experience is different, especially within racialized communities. And so There's a lot more work that we need to do. It's a topic of conversation that I'm regularly having with not just the business community, but with other levels of government, including the Prime Minister of Canada, who I know is following our efforts very closely, and it's a topic of conversation each time I chat with him. And so there's more work that we need to do, but it's work that we all need to do as a community. The story of Winnipeg is one that is a story of communities coming together. I mean, if you look at the story of the Forks, you know, a meeting place for Indigenous peoples for well over 6,000 years, we continue to come together in those locations. Today it's virtually, but we continue to come together as a community, and that's something that we know how to do very well. We do it better than most other cities around the world. We need to build on that to make sure we're continuing to break down those barriers in a world where the public and the political debates seem to be getting more divisive with each and every passing day. And so that's something I hope Winnipeggers can appreciate, at least at the municipal level, and I think at the provincial and federal levels. Politicians in Canada are doing their best to bring communities together, and that's what I'm trying to do at City Hall.
Great. So obviously, you know, those issues are really important to me as well.
Yeah.
I wanted to add that I also second to any businesses that are listening who haven't yet signed the accord, and you're probably aware that the Chamber launched a Truth and Reconciliation Roadmap in the summer. And one of the things that we highlighted was the Winnipeg Indigenous Accord. I remember one of the messages you shared in one of the gatherings was that you wanted to see the rooms full. You want to see the MTS Center full. And I totally support that. And it's interesting having those conversations, because for some of us, it's conversations that we've been having for a really long time. And then for others, it's their first conversation.
Yeah. You know, and I want to thank you, Jessica. I mean, you've been a leader in helping guide and support these efforts, yourself as a leader. The one thing that I've heard consistently for the last number of years is, I mean, there's a lot of work that's been happening over many years. Certainly before I was elected, it's not like reconciliation started with me. There's been people who have dedicated their lives at the grassroots level to really helping reconciliation in Canada. I think next to climate change, it's arguably one of the greatest challenges of our generation as Canadians. How are we going to respond to the TRC or not? And what we've heard through the dialogue so far on the Indigenous Accord is quite often I hear from businesses, we support reconciliation, we just don't know where to start. And it can be an overwhelming topic, and folks may not want to offend or miss the mark on it due to just the sensitivities given the topic. But this is a place to start. By signing on to the Accord, you're not signing on to having the mayor or City Hall act as the judge about what your efforts are. You're actually just signing on to commit to building out an annual plan of what your organization is going to do. It can be really, really extensive, or it can be pretty modest according to what the appetite and the resources are within a business. But you report annually through a city facilitated website on what you've accomplished and what you still have to do. We also facilitate all partner meetings, and so the lead within respective organizations, quite often they're working on reconciliation on the side of their desk. And so to be able to build that network so they can learn from others is incredibly powerful. And the feedback that we've received from, it's roughly 200 organizations have signed on, smaller organizations, individuals, not-for-profit, and some of our largest businesses in Manitoba. The support and the feedback has been really positive, but we should have thousands. We should be building and growing each and every year, and I'm going to continue to try to do what I can to get more to sign on, because it's one tangible way you can begin that more formalized journey of reconciliation as an organization, and it speaks volumes to the community. You know, if you really care about it, this is one place to start.
I agree. And so just hearing those numbers, we definitely need more people to sign. And one of the things that I always say is, if you don't know where to start, this is a place to start. You're going to be networking with other people who are also trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Our Winnipeg draft plan is out in public review right now. What is important about this document, and what is different about this new plan?
Well, the Our Winnipeg is kind of that overarching guidance. It's a 25-year plan. It is in the process of being updated. I'd say the most significant thing is, I announced it in my most recent State of the City address. It's incorporating the UN sustainability goals right in the fabric of the document. And so this is about environmental resilience, about economic prosperity, among other topics. They all speak to just improving the lives of Winnipeggers. If you're not familiar with Our Winnipeg, if you haven't participated in the public engagement, I'd encourage people to learn more at winnipeg.ca. But this is an important document. It is going to set out that roadmap for how we build a city that is much more sustainable than in the past.
Excellent. Encouraging more infill housing is one of the goals in Our Winnipeg, and there's also a new draft infill strategy that's also been released. Will this strategy help avoid some of the battles that we've seen between developers wanting to build more infill housing versus long-term residents?
Yeah, I mean, this has been needed for a long time, and the infill guidelines that are out right now are out there so that we can have that public engagement. You know, it's always that balance. Folks will say, I really want more infill until it's next door to them. And so, you know, it's not to judge either side on those debates. There are legitimate concerns and issues that folks will have. I want to see more infill in the city. I think it's a smarter way to grow, but how you do it is really where the rubber hits the road. And so I would encourage everybody to check out the guidelines, provide your feedback. We want to make sure that we're doing infill in a way that is sensitive to the local community and the local demands, but also providing ground rules that reduce red tape and reduce the hassle of building infill. And so we've heard from the development community for many, many years that they want those guidelines. You know, I think everybody in concept says yes. Where the real debate is, okay, well, what do they look like? And that's where we need to hear from the public. Members of council, members of the development community, Winnipeggers will have really strong views on this. That doesn't mean we should shy away from trying to move forward with this. And so it's been part of mandate letters for chairs of the Property and Development Committee. And I'm really proud of the fact that we've got a document now for public debate and consumption and more importantly, feedback.
Excellent. Another big strategy under development is the Transit Master Plan. And in the past few years, we've seen some major changes to schedules and routing. And at one point, you were talking about building 6 BRT routes across the city. What does that vision look like today?
Well, the vision continues to be one of support for public transportation. You know, the 6 lines that were discussed came out of the last master transit plan that was developed in the previous administration. We've seen now the opening of the Blue Line, which was something that started before I was elected, and I wanted to, and I committed to seeing it through to get it built. But there have been changes to the level of support on public transit from other levels of government. There's been change in governments. And one of the things that this plan does, and I think it does a good job, is it takes a look at how do we move people as efficiently as possible with the existing infrastructure that we have, the existing assets that we have. How do we move people more efficiently, notably in and throughout downtown during those peak periods? And so I think if people have a chance to check out the public engagement on it, I think they'll like generally what they see, and they'll provide us with their feedback on what they think. But I'm excited about the prospect of the plan being finalized next year. Council recently unanimously approved the transfer of funds from a federal transit fund to the green fund to help fulfill a request that came in from the province to flow funds to the North End Sewage Treatment Plant. But we've also unanimously asked the province to protect the remaining transit funds and to match those funds. Again, unanimous direction from council that's been provided now to the provincial government. The reason that's so important is when the master transit plan comes out next year and is ultimately voted on by council, we're going to need money to actually implement it. And so I think this new plan compared to the old plan is definitely looking at it through a lens of what can we build with less funds than was initially envisioned. Dedicated rapid transit routes, if they were all those dedicated routes and the land acquisition that comes with it, concern is of course delay in implementation, but also the cost. This is, I think, a smart way to do more quicker with less money, and that's something that's really important. As we grow to 1 million people, moving people through public transportation is going to increasingly be an issue. Previous campaigns that I've been in have really focused on potholes and fixing roads. I don't think anybody can argue that we haven't fixed a lot of roads. I mean, it has been historic construction. You can't drive anywhere in the city and not find places where we've modernized the roads, and that benefits transit that rides on those roads, as well as active transportation investments. But I think in the future, campaigns are actually going to be fought about gridlock. It's not going to be about potholes, because the city's population is growing. We are increasingly going to have to move more people around within the footprint of the city of Winnipeg. And so public transportation will increase in its importance. And so this master transit plan is incredibly important for the future of our city, and why I'd urge everybody to check it out and provide your feedback.
Absolutely. I'm excited to see that as well. I also think that we should probably call all plans master plans. I think that sounds fun. Since you first ran for election, you have spoken strongly about the need for municipalities to have a more fair funding arrangement with the senior levels of government. How is that progressing, and what really needs to happen in order to move this forward?
Well, I'll give you the short answer. We need the provincial government to make a decision to provide a more business-friendly and a more progressive form of revenue collection for municipalities, including the city of Winnipeg. That's what needs to happen. We've been trying to facilitate that happening now for a number of years. I'll continue to press for that. The reason it's important is as follows. The current form of taxation collection, it's a dumb form of tax. I mean, collecting property taxes, it's a regressive form of taxation. I mean, I think it goes back to feudal times. I mean, and there's a reason why provincial and federal governments have long abandoned it as a revenue collection tool. What I'd like to see is I'd like to have revenue collection by municipalities like the city of Winnipeg that have more skin in the game in economic development. I'd like to see more debates at City Hall about job creation and employment numbers than we do right now. Right now, a lot of our debates are about new developments. Well, they're important, but I think people would expect us to be talking about jobs for them, jobs for their kids. And right now, we don't have the same skin in the game for economic development that federal and provincial governments have. When there's big development projects in Winnipeg, the PST and GST that's collected provides a lot of money to coffers at other levels of government, but it takes a long time to kind of recoup those investments, especially when we're getting into like TIFs and things like that. I'll keep pressing for it. Right now we receive stable grants, which has been something this government has committed to, which is absolutely a positive thing. We get an operating grant every year. I don't think anybody should pride themselves at the provincial or the municipal level in the fact that we receive over $100 million in operating grant a year. To me, that's almost an admission the current funding model doesn't work. I'd like to see the city be able to stand on its own 2 feet and not to have to rely on an operating grant from the provincial government to carry out its operations. And I'd like to see a provincial government recognize that and just fix the funding formula. I'm not also asking for more money. Even if it's the same amount of money, but it is a smarter form of taxation, you're going to get better outcomes. As a municipal government, you're going to get better outcomes in the community. And so if we want to be the most improved province in the country, then let's fix that funding model for municipalities. They're economic engines for the province, and let's get on with it. And that's one way that we can work together to improve things for everybody that relies on municipalities.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that. I want to say thank you to you, Mayor Bowman, for being a champion for our small business community and for taking our questions today. I appreciate you coming by. Nice to see you, and nice to see that you and your family are well. And thank you.
Yeah, well, enjoy the rest of the day. Thanks for having me, and thanks for the conversation.
Absolutely. Appreciate it. I want to say thank you again to our sponsors, our title sponsor, Taylor McCaffrey, BDC, KPMG, Chamber of Commerce Group Insurance Plan, and RBC. Before we break into our roundtables, I wanted to remind you of two upcoming events. Next Thursday, October 29th, we have our October virtual luncheon with Carrie Twigg of Career Stories Consulting. Carrie will share with you how you can find, hone, and share your business story. And lastly, on Friday, November 13th, we are hosting another free webinar with the World Trade Center Winnipeg, discussing how you as a business owner can make inclusion a company value, with guest speaker Gopal Bansal, Vice President of Diversity Inclusion at RBC. Both of these events are no cost and can be found on our website at winnipeg-chamber.com. Now it's time to do some networking and connect with our city staff. Here's how the breakout sessions will work. On the left-hand side, you'll see a tab that says Sessions under the Stage tab. As an attendee, you can click on whichever breakout session topic that interests you. The topics are innovation, red tape reduction, diversity and inclusion, economic development, COVID response and recovery, and poverty reduction. Each breakout session will be 15 minutes each. An important ask is to please be respectful of the other members in your breakout session with regards to time. We want to ensure that the civic leaders get to hear from as many members as possible. So when you're asking your question, please be mindful of that time. Now it's time to go ahead, click on the Sessions button on the left, and join your assigned session. Enjoy.